Hey everyone, Docwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be the mid-tier list for patch 7.34e, and like I said in the carry tier list, these tier lists that I'm going to do this week and maybe into the future, depending how, popular they are, if you guys like this way, is I'm going to make all the tier lists about kind of your average MMR pub, not just like the high end. Obviously, I'm going to consider what the pros play, look at all the stats, all that kind of stuff, but then I'm going to adjust it a little bit because, yes, the best thing to do probably is to play the heroes that are broken in the higher MMRs, and still think that's the case, but kind of in the middle of the list, it gets a little bit different because what is good in, your average MMR is going to be a little bit different than what's good at high MMRs because your teammates are not going to be as good. The enemy's not going to be as good. You want someone more independent and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm going to be considering to make this list for kind of just the general population. And my videos are kind of geared towards that anyway. I'm not a pro player. I'm not super high MMR or anything like that. Obviously, I'm, divine, high divine, but that doesn't mean that I'm like anywhere close to the pros. And also my channel just is generally tiered and geared towards those lower MMR new kind of players. And so that's what I'm going to be focusing on for these lists into the future, so you get a feel of like what should I play and why this hero might be good in my MMR or bad in my MMR, even though it's the opposite in 10k or whatever like that. So anyway, let's just jump into it. First, we're going to look at Lena. I think this hero has always been good for new players, especially if they want to play mid. But when this hero is decent in higher MMRs, it's just going to be insane at lower MMRs because you're always going to have a good laning stage. You have insane range. You have good farm potential because your spells do a lot of damage. You can clear waves really quickly. It just gives you all the basics. And now you're kind of doing more of a spell damage build where, a couple years ago, whenever it was that Lena carry was a thing, when this hero was broken, that was more of a right-click damage build. But I still think you kind of do a little bit of both regardless. Like you still right-click, you just do more spell damage this time, where in the past, you did spell damage as kind of an afterthought where right-clicking was the main thing you can do. But you can still mix it up. You can still buy a little bit of both. You can still have kind of that package where you're not all committed into one area with this hero. And then if you do go for like the full spell damage build, you can honestly just like melt heroes that should be tanky. Like it's like, oh, that guy's tanky. Nope, he's like dead. He just like is absolutely destroyed with your spells. And so yeah, I think this hero is just great all around, especially for just your average player, because you can do everything well. Like every single thing that you need to do is going to be done well with this hero from the mid lane. You can gank, you can sit and farm, you can do a little bit of everything. The only thing with the hero is you can be a little bit squishy. You can get ganked. So if people do coordinate ganks, or you go into the late game and you get caught out of position, it can be a little bit difficult like any other kind of ranged hero like this, like a drow or anything like that. So it can be punishing, but that I think is also good to learn as well when you're in that like lower to mid-tier MMR, because it can really like force you to just think about the game, think about positioning, think about where the enemy heroes are. And if you get good at that, you can just stomp games with this hero. Then we have Necro. This is kind of like a borderline cheese hero. I just think at lower MMRs or mid-tier MMRs, even at like slightly higher MMRs, this hero is just a cheese hero that people can't deal with. They just have such a hard time dealing with it. Now, if there's like Zeus and other stuff on the enemy team, sure, there are bad matchups that this hero has. But increasingly, this hero has ways of dealing with those matchups and just doing insane damage as well. Like the ult just deletes people. You can just delete the carry, and it's very hard for them to deal with that because they're not as good as like high-end carries, and their team is going to coordinate to save them and all that kind of stuff. And so this hero just is a beast in the lane as well. Like you can have insane matchups. Again, it's a matchup dependent thing. You can have bad matchups too, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times even the bad matchups are not going to stomp you as bad as they would in higher MMRs. And this hero is good in higher MMRs. Like this hero is being played in the off lane, is kind of being played mid as well. So don't get me wrong, it's not that this hero is bad at higher MMRs. I just think that it's maybe not S tier, but in mid to lower MMRs or like any average MMR pub, this hero is just going to be absolutely insane. And now it does way more damage with the way the Ags works, and you get heart and all this stuff, and you're even tankier, and it's kind of ridiculous now. And then finally for S tier, this is another kind of cheese hero. And I think that's because I'm kind of putting these heroes up here that are a little bit cheesy, because if you can play them and you know how to play them, and not that I don't think Necro is very hard. Necro is actually a pretty easy hero to play, and Lean is not that hard, kind of easy. Maybe not as easy as Necro. Necro is very easy to play, but you just have to be careful about certain matchups. Lone Druid is kind of the opposite. Lone Druid is sort of a cheese hero that's kind of hard to play, but if you can learn how to play this hero, if you can get good with the micro, if you know what you're doing, I think this hero is a beast. It's actually kind of funny because Admiral Bulldog, I know, has recently started playing higher MMR pubs now, going back to ranks, and I think this hero wasn't that popular. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think this hero was actually that popular until he started playing again and just kind of showing that he can dominate games with it. Now people are like, oh wait, this hero's actually kind of broken, especially with the shard. I think the shard gives you so much. It gives you like 3 new things basically. I think, or maybe just 2, but it gives you like so many different things. There's so much that you can do with this hero. Now it does fall off a little bit late game. That is kind of the problem with it, I think. But I think that people aren't going to focus the bear as much as they should. And once you get to that late game portion, I've seen so many like lower to mid tier MMRs, even like higher MMRs that aren't just like straight up the highest immortal, where once you get ags, the bear just split pushes and just like the enemy doesn't know what to do. They're just like, do I TP back? Do I not? Like when you put the enemy in those precarious positions where they don't know what to do, you're going to win a lot more often than you'll lose because, you know, when you're playing against 10K players, they are coordinated. They know exactly what to do. At anything lower than that, you know, anything below immortal, people are just going to panic. People are going to scramble, and then you're going to get people off balance. You're going to get numbers advantages. You're going to get racks for free, all that kind of stuff. And this hero's great at that, and great early, great in the laning stage. It's if you can play this hero, which he is kind of hard to learn how to play with the micro and stuff like that. It's not a lot, but it is enough that like I don't play micro heroes, so I don't play it very much. But this hero can be a beast if you know how to play him. Then we have A tier. I think a lot of these heroes are kind of cheesy, actually. There are a few decent ones, but I think all the like typical mids are actually like not as good this patch or the recent patches. It's kind of more like cheesy heroes. And I think the first 2 are not really cheesy. I mean, Kunkka, Magnus, I don't think these heroes are really cheesy necessarily. I think they are just traditional mids. Kunkka has been nerfed, but I still think he's very, very good at low MMRs. I think the ways in which he was nerfed didn't really affect him for your average MMR player because he still does all similar stuff. Like the torrent thing is still insane. Like the whatever it's called. What is that thing called? What is his axe called? Torrent Storm. Yeah, that Torrent Storm is still ridiculous. All these things about the hero are still ridiculous. The fact that you can still X somebody that BKB'd and then bring them back after the BKB ends is still ridiculous. Like there's all these little things about the hero that are still crazy, and you can actually become kind of like a right-clicking hero later in the game, especially at low MMRs where you can buy like more right-click items. And then Magnus is kind of just this hero that you can't count out. He has a very good laning stage. He's very good at getting people out of position. RP can never be counted out, all that kind of stuff. I think he's very good from the mid lane right now. Now, these heroes aren't necessarily cheese heroes, they're more just like team fighty heroes because you have a carry in the off lane, carry in your carry position. So you just bring that little bit of team fight control and tankiness to the mix, and I think you can just dominate games with that. Although they can, you know, kind of fall off later in the game, or there can be things that counter them, I still think they're very, very good. And then the rest of the heroes are just kind of straight up like simple, easy, straightforward, have counter matchups, of course, but just can dominate games. Zeus, obviously, you can do insane damage with this hero. Hero is very, very good. The lower the MMR you go, the better this hero is. And I think this hero can just absolutely win games. You can do 100k damage or more in like every game. It's ridiculous. As long as it goes plus 30 minutes, you're going to be a beast with Zeus. And you're going to have a reliable laning stage too. You're hard to gank because you can now like Mario jump out of everything and all that kind of stuff. Very difficult hero to play against at lower MMRs. You're going to be super annoying too. Like you're just going to kill people and they're going to be like, how do I even deal with this guy? You have to get jumped to get killed, to like have no effectiveness. And yes, that's going to be hard against like the good carries like Spectre and like, you know, Weaver can like hunt you down, all that kind of stuff. So that's why you're not S tier if you pick Zeus, but in lower MMRs, this hero is very good. At higher MMRs, this hero might be like C or D tier for mid heroes. Then Viper, kind of cheesy in the way of like, and similar to Sniper, you can just like dominate the game and then it's very hard for the enemy to deal with you. And like Viper falls off late game, sure, but I don't think that actually matters that much, again, because you have like carry offlaners these days that you can just dominate the early game so hard, and you can actually kind of go like a right-click build with this hero. And this hero pushes towers insanely fast with the shard, that the downsides I don't think are that big of a deal because you're going to dominate the lane and just crush the early game so hard. And then like, yeah, you're not going to farm as well as some other heroes. You're not going to get the best late game timings or whatever, but you can still do a lot with the hero. And then Sniper is kind of the opposite, in the sense that, I mean, not the opposite in the laning stage, you're going to dominate the lane, but then this hero is just like a carry from the mid, and you're not going to get punished as hard for picking a carry from the mid the lower you go in MMR. And this hero can participate, can gank, can do some of those things, turn around ganks and things like that early on. But then this hero can just never be counted out, that like even if you're losing the game and you're stuck in your base, like as long as you're the enemy, or as long as your heroes on your team, your allies don't just like run out and feed, which, I mean, I get it, that'll happen a lot. Don't get me wrong. But if you can at least just like tell them, hey guys, just don't feed outside base. I'm a sniper. We're going to win the game. You can absolutely dominate the game. And then we have Outworld Destroyer. We have OD basically as a hero who, We'll just win late game. You just will always win late game with this hero. You just melt heroes. People at lower Mars don't understand like how to deal with the fact that this hero will 3-shot you. Like they just don't get it. Like supports aren't buying all these support items like Ghost Scepter and all that kind of stuff to stop this hero, and you're just melting people. So as long as you can get there, and hey, if you buy Meteor Hammer stuff like that, you can also dominate the early game too. The one thing about this hero is you're not going to farm as quickly. So it's like, do you go Meteor Hammer, which is kind of an early game all in, but then, mid game you kind of do nothing once you get those tier 1 towers down, but then Midas, you just have no impact early. So it's hard to really gauge what you should do depending on the game, but if you can get to the late game with this hero and get like 4 items, you just will win. Huskar is kind of the opposite of that, but a super cheesy here. Like if you can get good at Huskar, know how to dominate the lane, and then like do an early Roche, like you can just crush the game with this hero. But you can potentially fall off later. But again, you still have different things that will make you more dynamic late game than maybe you used to with the Ags and all that kind of stuff. And so you can be very hard to deal with. And then Tinker's just if you're a Tinker player, you can just spam this hero. You can just crush games. It is what it is. This hero's always going to be good at low MMR if you know how to play it. I think if you know how to play it, you're just not going to be a low MMR because you're going to play it and then just crush everybody and then raise your MMR. Like it's just how it's going to happen. Is if you want to be high MMR and you want to pick a hero to play that's like going to crush every game, just pick Tinker and get good at it. Next we have B tier. These are all like typical mids that I think are, obviously you do have some cheese heroes, but these are the typical mids that I think are very good right now. Some of them will be higher or lower in the 10K bracket or whatever, but these are more your typical mids, and I think these are decent right now. You can pick them if you're pretty good. Queen of Pain has weaknesses, but is overall really good, I think. Just kind of your run-of-the-mill, average, decent mid hero. Has bad matchups, has good matchups, can secure farm pretty well, but you're not going to secure as much farm as some of these other heroes because you're kind of mana-starved in a lot of ways, and your wave clearing isn't the best, but you're still overall pretty good. And with the shard and the Ags and all this kind of stuff, you get pretty tanky. You can do a lot of damage and be very annoying. Now, Queen of Pain does take some skill. You do have to know when to use your blink and all that kind of stuff, but still a very good hero if you know how to play it. Invoker, difficult hero to play, I think, but can stomp games if you know what you're doing. This is all about, can you play the hero? In fact, I probably should put Invoker like over here because it's like a cheese hero. Even though it's not fully a cheese hero, it is one of those, like, you have to know how to play Broodmother, Arc Warden, Invoker. You have to know how to play them, and then you can be very good with them, and they can win you games. But there are big downsides to all these heroes. And like Invoker, I mean, if you go for the early game build, like, are you really going to have much, like Quas Wex, are you really going to have that much impact? It's hard to say. If you're going to go for the Exhort build, which is more of like a carry build, you're just useless early, so there are downsides to it, but it can be very strong. Broodmother's kind of weird, just like all-inning with this push, and I don't know. You have to be good at it, and if you're good at it, I don't know that you're going to be low MMR. You're just going to spam it kind of like a Tinker and be high MMR. And then Arc Warden, if you're good at it, you can just dominate games as well. So that's Queen of Pain. Those are the cheese heroes. Then we have Primal Beast. Good overall, kind of team fighting brawler heroes, kind of just like a Kunkka or a Magnus. Maybe I would even put him up here, but the real reason why I don't put him higher is because I think he is such a brawl hero, such a fight hero, that it just doesn't feel as good when your team is very bad at fighting and brawling. They're not going to be, the lower you go in MMR, the worse they're going to be. This hero still can dominate, still gets very tanky, can have a lot of impact late, but it's not going to feel as good if your teammates are not as good. Leshrac has big counters. Can be hard to kind of play. You need to run in and do a lot of damage. You can be vulnerable depending on the matchup, so that's why I put him kind of lower here. But he can be very good in similar sense of like Zeus. I just think it's like harder to play Leshrac than it is to play Zeus, and he just doesn't have as much easy impact, although it's kind of in a similar vein. Like, you're just doing insane magic damage and pure damage actually now. But obviously the benefit to Leshrac is you can push towers where Zeus doesn't do that, but I just think for the most part you're going to have more success with some of these other heroes that do a lot of magic damage, like Alina. Like, kind of Alina's just like a better Leshrac in a sense right now. And then the last two here we have like Templar and Shadow Fiend. I think these heroes are just like carry from the mid. So if you can get away with it, if you're good at it and you won't get punished, you can play carry from the mid with a good early timing and just dominate, farm quickly, take all the towers, like kind of destroy the game with these heroes. But they can get punished. They do have weaknesses. They are pretty squishy at times, and can fall off late if that's what happens. Or you can just kind of like pick 3 carries, carry offlane, carry mid, and carry, and then that can be good at low MMRs, but then sometimes you actually will get run over depending how competent the enemy is. Then we have C tier. All these heroes are pretty viable, and these are just kind of like traditional mids. Pangalier's been nerfed a lot, but he's still pretty good. I just think that he's not as good as maybe he once was. Late game, yes, if you get all those items, he is very, very good, and you can still play him. It's just that relies on brawling. He's kind of like the primal beast, but then just he's been nerfed more, so he's not as good. And that's similar with Earth Spirit. Earth Spirit is pretty good. He can play mid right now. Although they did nerf him recently, I don't know how big that nerf was. I'm not really an Earth Spirit player, so it's hard for me to say exactly. But again, he's kind of a primal beast, kind of running around, constantly fighting, not as great late game, so you really have to make an impact early, and just doesn't feel as good, although it is a pretty strong hero right now. And then Dazzle, another kind of thing where it just doesn't feel like it's the best hero at lower MMRs right now. It's a little more complicated to play. The timings are a little bit different. You have to play around your team, and you're not just like a support where you can just grave people and you can just use your Q and just like hunt people down in the early laning stage. Like, it's a little bit more dynamic. It's a little bit different. You have to be really good at when to use your ultimate, because that is a little bit of a skill as well. Like, if you're good at Dazzle, you can be very good at Dazzle. And I've seen this hero be insane at higher MMRs, but I just think at lower MMRs, it's just awkward. Just feels weird. I don't think people really get it. And I think another thing that's the problem is I don't think your teammates get it. And that's kind of the problem is people don't really understand the full potential of this hero, and you need to play around your team. Like, you need let's say you have a Bristleback on your team. The Bristleback needs to understand I have a Dazzle. I can almost be perma-graved at some point, so I need to not pussy out. I need to go in and just man up and just fight the enemy, even if I'm low health, and they're just not going to do that. And that's kind of the problem with Dazzle, because yes, you can do damage and stuff, but you're sitting in the back still, kind of. You're being more annoying as like a mid hero, but you just need your teammates to understand that, and they're not going to understand that. Then Keeper of the Light is like even the more discount Leshrac or Zeus, like or Lena, all magic damage. You can push waves pretty well, but it's just kind of, I think you can get away with it, but it's not great. And then honestly, for these next 4 heroes, these are just traditional mids: Puck, Ember, Storm, Void. Like, there's nothing much to say about them other than right now this like traditional mid style is not the best. It's just like you want this other stuff from mid. They're just kind of squishy, and also they've been nerfed a lot. I don't know that Puck's been nerfed a ton, but just like this style and these heroes have been nerfed a ton recently, so they're just not that viable. I don't think you're really seeing them a ton. You can still get away with it. They're still pretty good, but they're just not the best. Then we have Earthshaker. He's fallen off a lot since he was like really good with his ags and everything, but he's still semi-viable. I think you can still pick this hero and have a lot of success in the lower MMRs, but he just has dropped off a ton since he got nerfed like maybe 6 months ago or whenever that was. Then we have Wind Ranger and Monkey King. I don't want to say these heroes are like cheese, but they are kind of cheese because they're on the end here. Like, these are straight up carries from the mid lane, and they're kind of cheesy because they're kind of matchup dependent. Like Monkey, you can just get destroyed in some lanes, and then Wind Ranger, you can just have like no impact some games. Like, the lane might be okay, but then some games, like, I have a Wind Ranger on my team. Why do I have a Wind Ranger mid? Like, what is this hero actually doing? And so I think that's why they're down here in C tiers, because they definitely are viable. You can stomp games with them, but they just sometimes feel horrible and just like they don't do anything, and you're honestly just like throwing the game by picking these heroes. Then lastly, for the viable heroes in the mid lane, we have D tier. Timbersaw was really good at one point, got a lot of nerfs, I think, and like some changes and stuff, and now he's just weird, he's awkward. More of an early game hero, so he's pretty bad in lower MMRs, I would say. Razor, just not great right now. He's okay from the mid, probably more of an off lane. I don't know. I just would not like to see a Razor on my team. Like, what are you really doing overall? Like, yeah, you're anti-carry, but you can really only static link one person. It feels like now there's like 2 or 3 or 4 carries. Like, Muerta's playing 4 position still and being a carry from the 4 position. What are you going to link Muerta? Like, you can't. It's just so awkward to only like have one hero that's doing that. Like, you're taking out one hero, but there's like 4 carries in the game. It's just kind of insane. Bat. This hero's fallen off, just like super early game stompy, kind of just doesn't do a lot right now, and then obviously relies on lasso and killing one hero, and also like bringing it back to your team. Like, you're not killing people alone, really. You're just like coordinating around your team. That's bad at low MMRs. Death Prophet, all in with the ult, and that's just always going to be bad at low MMRs, because unless you're stomping the game, and also with the way that the flat damage works now with the Siphon, I just don't think against a lot of these heroes that are buying heart and that are very tanky, it's just not as nearly as good. And like I said, the ultimate, you're committing, and it's just going to be easy without the coordination for the enemy to run away. Tiny kind of is still viable. It's just almost like, I would put Tiny as like almost like an Ember, Storm, Puck, like one of these heroes that is just a traditional mid, like a Queen of Pain, but just a melee mid that's traditional. You don't really fight as much, although you do. You can kind of jump in and use your avalanche toss and all that kind of stuff, and you can snowball the game, get your ags and things like that. That is just not nearly as viable as it once was. Dragon Knight, just kind of standard, okay, fine, but not great. Like, he just is weaker. Like, everything Dragon Knight wants to do, someone else does it better, and that's kind of just the story with this hero. It just doesn't feel very good. Pudge, you could get a good game with Pudge if you pick it in the right matchup and you're really good with it, but I don't know. This hero just is kind of dead. It was like good at one point, but now it's kind of fallen off a lot. Pugna, now more of a support still. They're kind of trying to make this hero mid, and I still think it's okay, I guess. I mean, against certain matchups, it can be pretty good, but it's still just more of a support. It feels like they can't do anything to make this hero, or it's hard for them to do anything to make this hero a good mid without being a good support. And then the last two, like cheese heroes, Visage and Meepo, just kind of the worst of the cheese heroes, just not great. If you're good at them, you can maybe have good games, but if I was saying, hey, you're going to pick a cheese hero, get good at it, pick one of these other ones. Like, these two are just not great right now. Then F tier, none of these heroes are really viable mid. Clinks is dead. Snapfire completely dead. Winter Wyvern, like, I guess you could maybe, but it's not even really a mid hero right now. Not an Alchemist patch, not like a good Nyx mid, like Nyx maybe 4 or 3 at best. I don't even know why he's on here, really. I think I could probably just take him off the list, honestly. Tusk, maybe pretty good at some point. Like, I think like a year or so ago he was okay. Gyro, not really a mid. Honestly, I can almost take him off the list. He used to be like a farming mid, then he could do like the magic damage build, but that's not really viable anymore. And then Skywrath, like, I guess, but like, this is like the way super uber discount terrible garbage version of all these magic damage heroes. Like, just not anywhere as dynamic, and so just not nearly as good. So that's the mid tier list for patch 7.34e. Like I said, this is for pubs and all that kind of stuff, so let me know what you guys think. I hope that helps you, because I think this is just like what you should pick if you're just an average pub going kind of player. So if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.